The British Empire is under increasing pressure from other countries and activists to return stolen and looted items. The British Empire, which claimed to be the largest empire in history at its height from the late 16th century to the 20th, established colonies, dominions, and protectorates all over the world. Although British colonial rule brought some modernization to the countries it colonized, it also limited applicability to democracy, self-governance, and equal rights and justice for all people. Numerous cultural artifacts that are now on display in British museums were stolen from the colonized population. According to human rights attorney Geoffrey Robertson, the British Museum, which is home to more than 8 million artifacts including the Parthenon Marbles and Benin Bronzes, has the highest concentration of stolen property. The following 13 cultural items were taken by the British from their native countries. One of the largest cut diamonds in the world, the Kohinoor weighs 105.6 carats, 21.12 g. It is a component of the British Crown Jewels. Currently, the diamond is mounted in the late Queen's crown. Legend has it that the stone was first discovered in the Indian Kola mine during the reign of the Kakatiya dynasty, who then installed it in the Bhadrakali temple in Warangal. Alauddin Khalji, the Delhi Sultan, allegedly acquired it later when he invaded southern India. However, Muhammad Mahavi notes the Kohinoor as being one of many stones on the Mughal peacock throne that Nadir Shah looted from Delhi in the 1740s, which is the first verifiable record of the diamond. Following the British annexation of the Punjab in 1849, during the reign of the 11-year-old Emperor Maharaja Duleep Singh, who ruled under the shadow of the British ally Gulab Singh, the first Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, who had previously owned the stone, the diamond then passed through various factions in South and West Asia before being given to Queen Victoria. The Kohinoor gained a reputation among the British royal family for bringing bad luck to any man who wears it because its history is filled with conflict between men. It has only been worn by female family members since arriving in the UK. The stone was worn by Queen Victoria as a circlet and a brooch. It was placed in the crown of Queen Alexandra. In 1911, it was transferred to the Queen Mary, and then it was transferred to the Queen Elizabeth II. The diamond is currently mounted on the late Queen's crown. Since India's independence from the UK in 1947, the governments of India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan have all asserted ownership of the Kohinoor and asked for its return. The claims were denied by the British government, which maintains that the gem was acquired lawfully in accordance with the provisions of the last Treaty of Lahore. The Cullinan Diamond was presented to King Edward VII, the British monarch at the time, according to the Royal Collection Trust, in 1907, 2 years after it was found in a private mine in South Africa's former Transvaal province. It also stated, it was sent to Ascher of Amsterdam to be cleft in 1908. The original diamond was the size of a human heart and weighed about 3,106 carats in its natural state, according to the Royal Ascher. The Royal Ascher explains that the gem was bought by South Africa's Transvaal government, which was governed by British rule, and given to King Edward VII as a birthday gift, supporting the British monarchy's claim to the precious stone. Evaristo Benyera, a professor of African politics at the University of South Africa, disputes this claim. Colonial transactions, according to him, are unethical and illegal, he told CNN. The entire Transvaal and Union of South Africa governments, as well as the associated mining syndicates, according to Benyera's narrative, were unlawful. Receiving a stolen diamond does not absolve the receiver, he claims. It is a blood diamond, the Great Star. The British Empire, the Transvaal government, and the private, mining, company were all connected by a network of colonialism. The second cut stone was mounted in the imperial crown, while the larger diamond was set in the sovereign scepter with cross. These diamonds have been worn by Queen Elizabeth II in numerous portraits. Leanne Mathis, national spokeswoman for the South African opposition political party Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, told CNN that the late Queen of England has flaunted these diamonds for over half a century. Mathis claimed that native peoples' lands and mines had been appropriated by British colonial powers. She declared, Our call is for repatriations for all acts of colonial theft, of which the theft of the Great Star of Africa is one. We don't call for its return, as this implies that there was a valid agreement in terms of which the British royal family was borrowed the diamond. It is in their possession purely as a result of colonial tenacities that suffocated natives in this country and elsewhere, Mathis told CNN. The British defeated Myso's ruler Taipu Sultan, also known as the Tiger of Myso, in a battle in 1799, and the colonists took his sword and ring from his corpse. The sword was given back to India, but the British sold the ring at auction in 2014 for $145,000. According to the website of Christie's, the 41.2G ring was purchased by an unidentified bidder for nearly 10 times its estimated value at the auction in the heart of London. The name of the Hindu god Ram is engraved in raised Devanagari on the jeweled ring. The marble from the 2,500-year-old Parthenon wall was transported to London by Lord Elgin in 1803. Elgin claimed that he had the right to take the marble, but he was unable to provide any documentation to support his claims. The marbles are still in the British Museum despite a request from Greece for their return. The Athenian Parthenon Marbles, which are located 75 meters from the frieze carved under the guidance of the Greek sculptor Phidias and other temple metopes, are referred to as the Elgin Marbles in the UK because a British diplomat removed them from the monument and transported them to the island. The Rosetta Stone, a 114 centimeters tall by 72 centimeters wide basalt block carved out of granodiorite by Ptolemy in 196 BC, contains writing in 3 different Egyptian dialects. Napoleon Bonaparte acquired the inscription from Egypt, which the British had acquired following the early 1800s French army defeat. Egyptian officials tried to get Britain to give back the Rosetta Stone over the years, but they were unsuccessful. The Rosetta Stone has thus been kept on display at the British Museum in London ever since it was brought to England. The Rosetta Stone, which bears matching inscriptions in hieroglyphic, Demotic Egyptian, and Greek scripts and was found in Egypt's northern town of Rosetta by French officer Pierre-François Bouchard in July 1799 during Napoleon Bonaparte's campaign in Egypt, was crucial in helping 19th-century French scholar Jean-François Champollion decode Egyptian hieroglyphics. 2 centuries after the French emperor's passing, the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt and Palestine, which launched contemporary European colonialism in the Middle East, is still a contentious subject. In 1798, the Corsican general sailed east with 300 ships with the intent of capturing Egypt and obstructing a vital trade route between Britain and its colonies in India. The Kingdom of Benin was a significant city-state in West Africa during the Middle Ages, and Benin City served as its historic capital. From 1897 to 1960, Benin City was a part of the British Empire. It is now a part of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Many of the ceremonies and rituals connected to the former Kingdom of Benin are still carried out today. The British had largely taken control of the Nigerian coast's trade by the end of the 19th century. The Benin Bronzes came to the British Museum in the context of this aggressive expansion of colonial power. The balance of power between West African kingdoms like Benin and the European nations they traded with shifted toward European control during the second half of the 19th century. Late in the 19th century, newly developed military technologies and industrialized European countries started to exert more influence across the African continent. This political and economic movement culminated in the Scramble for Africa, a territorial land grab. The transatlantic slave trade had a significant impact on West African history during this time period as well. This extensive human traffic provided labor for the American colonies and plantations, including those of Britain. Although this trade was largely outlawed by the late 19th century, its expanding scope and brutality during the centuries before it had a significant impact on West African societies. In the end, a conflict with the Kingdom of Benin resulted from the desire of the British to increase their control and influence in the area. A climate of mistrust and hostility was fostered by the British Empire's slow expansion into the kingdom's neighboring countries and their growing resistance to Benin's trading terms. 7 British delegates and 230 of the mission's African carriers were killed in an attack on a purportedly peaceful but obviously provocative British trade mission in January 1897 as it was travelling to Benin City. The British launched a significant military expedition in retaliation against the Kingdom of Benin in response to this incident. Benin City was taken by British forces in February 1897. The number of people killed during the capture of the city in Benin cannot be determined precisely. However, it is evident that the prolonged fighting resulted in numerous casualties. The British forces' occupation of Benin City resulted in extensive looting and destruction. The Benin Royal Palace was burned and partially destroyed along with other buildings and monuments. British forces looted the shrines and related compounds, taking thousands of items with ceremonial and ritual value back to the UK as official spoils of war, or distributing them among the expedition members according to their rank. This included items taken from royal ancestral shrines, including ceremonial brass heads and ivory tusks from former obas. More than 900 brass plaques, most of which date to the 16th and 17th centuries, were also among the stolen items. They were discovered in a storage area inside the palace. These plaques, which had previously been used to decorate the palace walls, served as important historical records for the Benin court and kingdom, allowing for the illustration of earlier customs and practices. After the occupation, several Benin chiefs were put to death, while the Oba was later captured and exiled. This brutal, violent colonial episode, which was justified as necessary military action against a barbarous kingdom, effectively signaled the end of the independent Kingdom of Benin. Several European museums, including the British Museum, have decapitated, dried, and tattooed Maori heads on display. Men's skin was carved into by the Maori, who then filled the grooves with ink. Decapitated and dried heads played a significant role in Maori sacred ceremonies, and the renowned Tamoko facial tattoos symbolized high social status in Maori culture. However, these Maori heads were nothing more than collectibles and commodities for trade when the European settlers arrived in New Zealand in 1770. The so-called trophy heads, which are still on display in many museums across Europe, are part of the colonial collection of human remains, which included the Maori heads. It is purported that the collection and display of human remains was done for scientific purposes. However, it was also a means of demonstrating the conquest of subjugated peoples. New Zealand has been working to repatriate these ancestors' remains recently, though some are still housed in museums. A Khoikhoi woman named Saatchi Sarah Bartman was transported from South Africa to London in the 19th century, where she was displayed as a freak show attraction. She was given the name Hottentot Venus, which was a derogatory term for the native Khoikhoi people used during the colonial era. When Bartman was 16, Dutch colonists killed her husband, and she was later bought by a trader and sold into slavery. Bartman was reportedly taken to Europe in 1810 and paraded around for her large bottom after signing a contract with a British doctor who was a friend of her master. She attracted scientific attention and racialized eroticism. Bartman's remains were on display in a Paris museum for years after her death there in 1815. President Nelson Mandela didn't successfully negotiate for her remains to be brought back to South Africa and given a proper burial until 2002. After the Battle of Magdala, the British took religious texts from Ethiopians that they called the Magdala manuscripts. According to Atlas Obscura, a British expeditionary force besieged the mountaintop fortress of Magdala in 1868, leading to the capture of more than 1,000 primarily religious manuscripts that were transported to Britain on the backs of 15 elephants and hundreds of mules. 350 of those manuscripts were eventually acquired by the British Library. Many of these manuscripts, however, are not easily accessible to the general public. Consider them to be prisoners with scant access to the outside world. Why do they continue to keep these items that they are unable to even display, when that is the main purpose of museums, said Okekeagilu. There is no logical justification for these items to stay in Britain, given their immense cultural significance and significant roles in Ethiopian Christians' religious rituals. With the goal of returning stolen goods to Ethiopia, the Association for the Return of the Magdala Ethiopian Treasures, from it, was established in 1999. Although the organization's campaign is ongoing, some items have been successfully recovered. Following their victory over Tewodros II of Ethiopia in the Battle of Magdala in 1869, the British adopted the scriptures that started the conflict. An organization called the Association for the Return of Magdala Ethiopian Treasures was established to bring the manuscripts back to Ethiopia. But nothing constructive came of it. The British Library has collected 12 religious manuscripts from Ethiopia, showing the paintings, font art, and religious practices of the Tewahedo Church in Ethiopia. The Pekingese puppy named Luti was taken from China's Imperial Summer Palace by British forces. British and French troops plundering the palace in October 1860 during the Second Opium War discovered the dog. I have been able to retain a good many trifles that I bought in the French camp, also a pretty little dog, a real Chinese sleeve dog. It has silver bells round its neck. People say, it is the most perfect little beauty they have ever seen, British Captain John Hart Dunn wrote in his diary. The puppy was given to Queen Victoria as part of her royal collection of dogs, and the monarch gave her the name, Luti. Because of her oriental habits and appearance, Luti was shunned by the Queen's other dogs and remained at Windsor Palace until her death in 1872. The Mughal Empire's Shah Jahan, who built Taj Mahal in tribute to his adored queen, is the owner of a white jade wine cup. There is a lotus flower below the jar, acanthus leaves, and a goat-like creature with a horn and beard on the handle. Colonel Charles Seton Guthrie stole this lovely wine jar in the 19th century and sent it to Britain. It has been displayed at the London's Victoria and Albert Museum since 1962. In 1875, Henry Wickham, a British explorer and plant thief, stole 70,000 seeds from the Hevea brasiliensis, a 140-foot, 43-meter, tall rubber-bearing tree in the Santarém region of Brazil, and transported them to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew, London. At the same time, Brazil's economy was booming as the Amazon rubber boom came to an end. The South American nation gave the man the moniker, Biopirate. The Amaravati Marbles, also referred to as the Elliot Marbles, are a group of 120 sculptures and inscriptions that were retrieved from the Amaravati Mahachaitya in Guntur, Andhra Pradesh, and are now on display at the British Museum in London. While there is no direct archaeological evidence linking the location to Ashoka, donor inscriptions from the monument suggest that the stupa was most likely built sometime in the 3rd century BC. The stupa is believed to have undergone 2 major construction phases that collectively lasted more than 400 years, with the structure remaining in use well into the 13th century. One of the earliest, biggest, and most significant Buddhist structures in ancient India was the Great Shrine of Amaravati. Stupas originated from the prehistoric Indian practice of erecting mounds over important peoples' cremated remains. The shrine, with its sturdy, octagonal construction, most likely housed a relic, perhaps that of a well-known teacher. In order to honor the relic that was revered, devotees circled the stupa counterclockwise. They could gain benefit from looking at scenes from the life of the Buddha depicted in sculpture on the railing that encircled the walkway. For the stupa's decoration, some devotees made financial contributions, which are memorialized in inscriptions. In 1855, Balfour hired Indian artist P. Murugasa Mudalia to draw the sculptures because at the time, India was governed by the East India Company. However, Balfour was so unsatisfied with the finished product that he also convinced Dr. A. J. Scott to take a number of photographs. These two were sent to London before Captain Linnaeus Tribe took an additional 75 pictures in 1858. After that, in 1859, the sculptures were transported to London. Numerous priceless African artifacts were transported to London during Britain's anti-slavery missions in order to be sold to European collectors and museums. We demand that all stolen artifacts be given back to their rightful owners.